I'm used to traveling to uncharted territories, but this time I'm on a journey into the mysterious world of a painter whose work has haunted me for years. It all began 18 years ago at an exhibition of Scandinavian art in London. The pictures were a breath of fresh air, but 2 or 3 of them, still, silent interiors, were unforgettable. They were all by the same artist, a Dane called Wilhelm Hammershoi. Today I'm embarking on a long-delayed quest to find out more about this surprisingly uncelebrated man. My journey begins in London's National Gallery, where, nestling quietly amongst its colourful contemporaries, is the only Hammershoi on public display in Britain.
This is a really intriguing painting to me because superficially it looks like a cool Scandinavian interior. Everything's very static, very restrained, nothing much going on. And yet when you look at it, there are all sorts of intriguing riddles to the painting. First of all, the figure herself. The light falls, a little bit catches the boiler, a little bit on the door there, but most of it hits the back of her neck. And the way the neck is lit up, it sort of brings the body to light, gives it flesh and blood. Then, what is she doing? She's got her arms up there. What's going on? It sort of reminds me of a Vermeer, lady reading a letter, so I kind of imagine she must be reading a letter, but she might not be. It's not quite sure, but something is clearly happening from her position. Then, the other thing is actually the room itself, this corner of the room. The table is pushed right up against the doors. Both the doors are shut.
So, are we looking at dark Freudian psychodrama, or an afternoon in turn-of-the-century Copenhagen?
The view of London from the river gives a whole different perspective on the city and attracted many great artists, including Turner, Monet and Whistler.
Monet painted the Thames with big swirls of intense colour, but Hammershoi was more attracted to the work of his hero Whistler. He had turned his back on the bright lights of Impressionism and used subdued blues and greys to capture the dank melancholy of the Victorian fog. Hammershoi specially came to London to meet Whistler. He knocked on his door, but the great man wasn't in, and Hammershoi was too shy to try again. He turned his attention instead to the great buildings of the capital.
The magnificent facade of the British Museum, symbol of British might and cultural majesty, seems a natural subject for a painter. But Hammershoi preferred the railings. His portrayal of the British Museum, like his portrayal of the woman in black in his interiors, seems deliberately designed to avoid the face.
Midwinter London. Hammershoi painted these wonderful, if slightly eccentric, views of the British Museum from his lodgings across the road. Though he spent the day sketching in the museum, the buzzing and the flickering of the newly installed electric lights drove him back to his room with a view.
It's the street that never sleeps. We see people in the morning, during the afternoon because of the museum, a lot of people going to the British Museum, and then, you know, right up until the small hours. It's absolutely non-stop, and I would say it's almost 24/7. It goes on every hour of the day. From about 8:30, you see the sort of the morning starts on the Great Russell Street set. The chestnut seller appears, at least during the winter month, and he rolls his truck down here and he sets it up just round the corner and lights it, and that's the sort of the beginning of the morning session. And then you see the hot dog sellers arriving, who usually place themselves outside the gates of the British Museum. I think
the Salmonella brothers.
Exactly. And then around 9, you see a great sort of crocodiles of school children and students being herded along to see the British Museum. Some of them are British, some of them are foreign. And then, you know, right up until the small hours, sometimes, you know, there are people walking home after a carousing night out, and a lot of junkies on the way for their next fix, sort of 6 in the morning, that sort of thing.
When Hammershoi was painting this, of course, his streets were absolutely empty, devoid of people. Why do you think he did that?
Well, I think that must have been to do with his mindset and his painting style, because I'm sure 100 years ago there were just as many people walking up and down the street as there are today, if not more.
Have you become a fan of Hammershoi's work?
Oh, definitely. Here? I mean, it certainly grows on you. It's not a painting that you want to put in your wallet exactly. It's not heartwarming, but it's very intriguing, and it's very interesting to try and get inside his head and think, what did he see?
I always feel at this time Hammershoi must have been always somewhere in the shadow, and there must have been lots of shadow in London at that time. And in a sense, I get the feeling maybe this is what Hammershoi liked about London, that he could shroud himself with a cloud. There's something about the emotional quality of his paintings. It's almost like it's like he's giving a room feelings, which is an odd thing. It's like a room that he's invited you into, and yet you don't quite know what you're going to find there. But I want to be there. The only other Hammershoi in a public collection in Britain was once owned by Leonard Borwick, a Victorian concert pianist who was Hammershoi's only British collector. I tracked it down to the Conservation Department of Tate Britain. The painting is an interior, but this time the room is empty. There's no sign of the mysterious woman in black. A portion of the painting has been folded back, and with the help of an infrared camera, we make an intriguing discovery.
Yes, and I can see woman's face, dark hair drawn back. Who's the woman, mystery woman?
We think it's more than likely Ida, his wife. She occurs in most of his populated interiors. She seems to have been a muse.
What was her background, and where'd she come from?
She came from a very quiet, working-class Danish family. She was quite provincial, she was quite staid. We know that when she went to Paris, she was shocked and horrified by the amount of makeup and décolletage that was on display, and wrote back to her mother-in-law complaining about the appearance of women in Paris. So we know she was quite shy and quiet and didn't make much of an impact to Hammershoi's profile anyway.
Ah, I see, yes. That's how they fit together. It's quite a substantial chunk of the painting, isn't it? It's been folded over.
Yes, 5 centimetres from this edge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so adding on the tacking margin, it's probably about 7 centimetres. So.
And just on the edge of just quite deliberately taking out the figure.
Yes.
Was the figure, was she standing behind at that table there?
Between the wall and the table.
Right, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I think it's quite nice that Boric didn't actually cut the section off that he didn't like. Instead, he somewhat lovingly chose to just wrap it round and the back of the stretcher. And the fact that we still have this is quite unusual.
Keeping the option open.
Exactly, keeping the option open.
It's a lovely painting, and yet this can't be seen at the moment, is that right? Is it ever on display?
It hasn't been on display recently, but there are some plans to perhaps show it in the not too distant future.
I hope so.
Yeah, so do I.
I think I'm becoming a friend of Hammershoi. The friends of Hammershoi need to be formed. Would you join up?
I'm already a friend of Hammershoi. Yes, absolutely.
Should we be friends of...
I'm a fully paid up member of that club.
Oh, well, excellent. We could go into empty rooms and then sit there and run away.
So, a little more light on the subject of his paintings, but what about the way he painted? It's time to widen the search and discover who, if any, were his role models. In 1887, Hammershoi, the young student, comes to Holland and sees the work of a painter who'd been obscure for nearly 200 years. His name is Johannes Vermeer. When Hammershoi came here to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, he'd have seen a lot of interiors. That was the great legacy of the Dutch 17th century painters. Interiors of everyday life going on. People sitting at table, laughing, crying, holding babies, glasses of gin, and anything else that comes to hand. Dogs are waiting for bones. Noisy scenes with stories to tell.
And you come to these Vermeers here, the lady reading a letter, and the milkmaid over there. And again, there is a certain amount of narrative, but it's very much pared down. There's only single figures in there, and they're not actually looking towards us, the viewer. They're absorbed in some quite small activity, reading a letter, pouring the milk out of the jug. And Hammershoi, when he paints 220 years after Vermeer, he reduces it completely. He turns Ida completely away from us. He's turning her back to us. There's obviously something going on, but you don't know what it is. So Hammershoi is reducing it even more, but it still seems in the same progression, away from anything too obvious, away from anything too offered up to the viewer. It's meant to puzzle us, it's meant to offer stillness and a bit of an enigma.
After one of his visits to Holland, Hammershoi produces this striking picture of his sister Anna, with echoes of Vermeer's lacemaker. A decade later, he was still returning to what had excited him when he first saw Vermeer. Rembrandt's work also left a deep impression and inspired Hammershoi's masterpiece, 5 Portraits. This was intended for the Danish National Gallery, but sadly they passed on it, a blow from which friends said Hammershoi never recovered. Here we are in Delft, where Vermeer is now a megastar. Though strangely, considering he lived and worked here, there's little for his fans to get excited about. The odd plaque, a few legal documents, but none of the paintings he completed here. One group I'm going to meet hopes to change all that. They call themselves the Friends of Vermeer, and they want to build a museum to him. I'm off to see them and do a bit of missionary work on behalf of the Friends of Hammershoi.
Hello, friends of Vermeer. It's a pleasure to have you here again. You know, tonight we have a person in our middle. I think it is Michael Palin. Palin, sorry, Michael Palin. Michael Palin.
I think we could both of us drink to two marvellous artists, Vermeer and Hammershoi, and the friends of both. Friends of both. Thank you. Thank you. Do you know his work?
I haven't seen it before,
Well,
but it looks like...
You see, there are real similarities, aren't there?
Very cool.
Yes, very cool, and he tends to keep, you know, his wife. And this is his wife, I think, most of the year. She's always got her back to us, whereas, you know, so, and done that quite deliberately.
Maybe she's afraid of him.
Maybe she's afraid of him. He's afraid of her. Who knows?
Though I am discovering more about Hammershoi, it still feels as though I'm just skimming the surface. Whatever there's left to find out will lie here in his home country, Denmark. Approaching Copenhagen from the sea, you have to pass by the mighty Kronborg fortress at Elsinore, made famous by Shakespeare as Hamlet's castle. Kronborg was the key to the Baltic. No one had access unless tolls were paid, which made the Danish king rich and this castle so quietly magnificent.
When Hammershoi came here in 1897, he typically didn't paint this grand exterior. Or this. He painted the roof.
Beautiful, almost photographically detailed in its lines and shadows, but decidedly not the postcard view. As Hamlet lies dying in this vast castle, Shakespeare gives him one of his most famous lines, "The rest is silence." As the castle of Elsinore dominates the Baltic, the massive new state-of-the-art opera house dominates the waterfront at Copenhagen, Hammershoi's home throughout the 51 years of his life. Copenhagen isn't quite what I expected. I don't know what I did expect, but it's a welcoming city, but it has a restraint to it. It's not forcing itself upon you, nor is it saying, you have to come here. It's saying, this is what we are, take it or leave it. Very Hammershoi. It's not forcing itself upon you, nor is it saying, you have to come here. It's saying, this is what we are, take it or leave it. Very Hammershoi. Historically, Copenhagen was always a great mercantile city, and when
Hammershoi was alive and working here, these wharves would be full of ships coming and going from all over the world. And yet in his paintings, the only suggestion of their presence are just the tips of the masts seen above the buildings, almost as if it was another world out there into which he didn't want to go.
Welcome.
Hi. Whoa.
Is a hand.
Excellent, excellent.
Welcome to Copenhagen.
Thank you, thank you.
To Christian's
Very
house.
nice of you to greet
Yes.
me. Thought it was appropriate that we arrived by boat. So this is where Hammershoi
loved this
lived and
street,
worked.
you
So
see.
he was very, very close to the water.
He loved the
always.
water, he loved the old part of this town. Well, this is actually Strandgade where Hammershoi lived. He lived in that house on the first floor, and he lived on in this house on the first floor.
Didn't move far, did he?
No,
not a
so
great
he really
ambition.
liked this area very much.
Yeah, yeah.
And it happens to be my office today where he lived.
That is amazing.
So I'll go and show it to you.
Yeah, sure. The coincidences are enormous.
Yes.
You and Hammershoi linked so much because, of course, through your great uncle, was it, who was his patron?
That's right. So this is the flat where Hammershoi spent his last years of his life.
Oh, well, how long?
From 1913 to 1916.
Oh, yeah.
So
And remind me what this is now?
this is the protocol office of the Foreign Ministry.
Oh, right.
And that's why I have my office here.
And you're chief of protocol?
That's correct.
Oh, yeah.
So we go into my office, which was the living room of Hammershoi.
So the room shapes really haven't changed?
That's right. It's the same.
Ah, yes.
Same view.
Yes. Strandgade 25 left me feeling a little bit frustrated because I could see elements in there of Hammershoi's work. The tall windows, the masts outside the windows. Time has passed, but just every now and then you look at an angle or you look at a combination of window, wall and the view outside and it all works. And yet the building itself is now used for something else. Just enough has changed. The use of the building, the number of people around there, telephones, all those sort of things that break the silence. That's enough to make me feel slightly frustrated that I'm almost there, but not quite. Can you tell us something of your great-uncle's relationship with Hammershoi?
He met Hammershoi when he was about 24 years old, and he liked his paintings. So he said to Hammershoi, "Are you doing okay? Are you selling pictures? Are you..." "No, not really." And he said, and Bramson said, "Suppose I do some commissions for you. You can paint my wife and my son and playing cello." He didn't do many portraits, and he only painted people he knew. Portrait wasn't his strong thing. He would rather do landscapes or interiors. It was simply to get Hammershoi going and sort of to give him an assignment that he could pay for. So that's how it started, their relationship. And then it developed into a very close relationship which lasted the rest of Hammershoi's life. I think together they made a great couple, so to speak, because Hammershoi had the talent, the genius, which would be Bramson's view of Hammershoi. But he didn't have the push. He didn't have the go. He was introvert. He was quiet. He was not sure of himself. And Bramson pushed him on and said, "You're better than you think, and I'll support you and be your manager."
How do you rate Hammershoi?
I find him fascinating. I must say, I can say, why not more colors? People even think, some people say he was colorblind. It's quite amazing that a painter should be colorblind. But the fact is that Hammershoi didn't like strong colors. and he preferred them to be more subdued. So a lot of his paintings are very relaxed in colors. That was his temperament. That was his style. But I like him.
It's been good to get this far, but across the road, tantalizingly close, is 30 Strandgade, where Wilhelm lived for 10 of his most productive years. This is the Holy of Holies for a friend of Hammershoi. Suddenly I realise I've seen all this before. I'm on the edge of one of the paintings. An afternoon in Copenhagen. I'm another caller at the Hammershoi house. The housekeeper looks down, slightly disapprovingly, to see who it is. But today there's no one at home. In a way, he feels even more elusive here than he did in London. The most obvious place to start looking for Hammershois is the Statens Museum for Kunst, the Danish National Gallery. Bramson, his great patron, donated his entire collection of 28 paintings, bought with the proceeds of his dental practice, to secure Wilhelm a place in Danish history. Or so he thought. But the museum returned all the paintings when Hammershoi went out of fashion in the 1930s. Recently they tried to get them back, but it was too late. Most had been sold. With Hammershoi's work now fetching $500,000, they must be kicking themselves. Excuse me. Yeah. Could I ask you, are you familiar with the work of Wilhelm Hammershoi?
Not really, no. We are from Finland, not Danish. So.
I want to ask you if you know the work of an artist called Wilhelm Hammershoi.
I'm sorry, I'm not from Denmark, and I don't know the name.
Well,
I'm sorry.
He's a brilliant painter. Where are you from?
From Norway.
From Norway?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Excuse me, I wonder if you're familiar... Sorry. Excuse me. Can I ask you if you know an artist called Wilhelm Hammershoi?
Yes, I know him.
Yes? And do you like his work?
Yes, lots.
Yeah.
Most people like him, and think is interesting to look at the grey tones and the neck.
Yeah, the neck.
Yes.
Yes, I love the bits of the neck. You're a neck person, right? Yeah, no, I think it's extraordinary the way the light just falls on the neck. Yeah. Excuse me. Could I ask you if you know about an artist called Wilhelm Hammershoi?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Good.
I always saw with buildings and chairs, and there are some with the people on also.
Yes.
I never saw that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw it.
I know, I mean, quite a lot of nudes here, which you don't associate with him. Apparently he was a rather shy, quiet man. When he painted nudes, he had to go and lie down.
We wondered if this woman was the same as this one.
Yes,
Yes.
that's just what I'm wondering. I think it's an extraordinary riddle to know whether they're the same.
The year before.
He was married to her in 1891, that's right, and whether he did this painting of her before. If he did, that would be quite extraordinary in a sense, because certainly all the books would not suggest that he would be painting nudes at that time, or that he ever painted his wife naked. So that's quite interesting. So the plot thickens. Today I've learnt two things. That Hammershoi was sadly underrated by the Danish art establishment, and that occasionally he painted ladies without black dresses on. Hammershoi, always fascinated by architecture, took commissions to paint the grand side of Copenhagen, the serene royal palaces and squares dominated by imposing equestrian statues. But there was another side to Hammershoi, like there is to his city. He was a bit of a rebel. Round the corner from his house in upmarket Strandgade is the Free State of Christiania. Founded by a bunch of hippie squatters in the 1970s, it's a mini community, free from Danish rule. In his own time, Wilhelm was influential in founding the Independent Exhibition, a movement supporting free-minded artists. The painting that inspired his break with the establishment was a sensitive portrait of his sister Anna. Painted when Hammershoi was only 21 and admired by Renoir, it inexplicably failed to win the prize everyone expected from the Academy. What are these, Lisa?
These are photographs of his family.
Ah, yes, that's Anna.
This is Anna, yes. It was probably made at the time where he painted his painting of a portrait of a young girl, which was a portrait of his sister Anna.
She remained a spinster, didn't she? Never married. Oh, that's... Yes. That's Wilhelm?
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is Wilhelm's mother and his sister Anna and his little brother Sven.
Mother's a rather handsome woman, isn't she?
Yes. All through her life, she would be keeping scrapbooks of his paintings.
Quite, so she was the archivist too?
These are photos from his...
Strandgade 25, yes, that's...
July 1913.
Yeah.
Where he lived with his wife Ida.
Oh, wonderful photographs. I mean, it looks as though the clock might have been a gift or something, rather a precious thing, the way they're standing there. Yeah. And Ida standing there with the same expression she has in all the paintings, aren't Still, the clock looks quite animated. And there's Ida again. She looks so sad, poor thing. It could be that she was pining for the children she and Wilhelm never had. But a closer read of these letters suggests there could be another explanation.
So this letter is from Wilhelm to his mother, and he's been writing it just when he was about to get engaged with Ida.
Oh, yeah.
And The situation is that Ida's mother seems to be going crazy sometimes, or going mad sometimes, and that would create a stir in her family. So really what Wilhelm is trying to say to his mother is that they should act very quickly and get married very soon so that Ida could leave the house.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
It is interesting.
The idea Ida's mother might have been a bit manic depressive or something like
Yes.
that might account for what some people think that Ida herself
Yes, exactly.
was a difficult, moody person.
This is a sketchbook he did when he was in his teens.
Pretty accomplished, isn't it, really? I mean,
Yes.
infant prodigy, perhaps. But these have been sort of things you'd have done at school or
Yes, he was
art
taking
school?
private lessons. His parents would pay for his private lessons.
So his parents were quite enlightened and encouraging.
Yes, definitely, yes. And he was obviously showing a talent very early.
Yeah. You know, the colours in that are really rich, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Very intense. I heard somewhere that there was a suspicion he was colourblind, which is why he painted in the dark
greys.
tones. But
yes.
This would seem to say no.
These would already be rumors at his own time, but they have been followed him all until today, really. But
that's
they have
not
been
the work of the colourblind.
No, not so. Then we have postcards here. He was a great collector of postcards, and he travelled a lot.
These were from his journeys.
Yes, he went away to Holland and to England.
Yeah.
This is from the inside of the British Library.
British Library reading room.
Yes.
In the British Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get the idea he was rather unhappy away from home to start with?
No, I don't. No, I don't get that. Actually, he seems to be very comfortable traveling around. London has a special place in his heart. He writes that he feels very much at home in London. So he liked to travel a lot, and
It wasn't just the fog and the general sort of gloom.
no, yeah, he has descriptions of the fog and the suits.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Yeah.
that it make him feel sore in his throat.
The fog and the soot making
Yes.
that's what he said. Yeah.
Yes.
So actually there's a lot more material.
Oh yes, but we haven't had the time to register it yet, so they have to be translated as well, and we have piles of letters still. Yes.
Really? So
to be discovered.
even the expert scholars haven't yet looked at these letters?
No, not all of them.
There's more of a story to tell.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Have you got a few years off so we can translate
Yeah,
these
that'd be
and
nice.
write the official biography? I mean, that's fascinating. Well, I think after talking to Lotta, I have a much clearer idea about the family. It's beginning to take a little bit more shape, but Wilhelm himself doesn't emerge much from this. In a strange way, it's the other members of the family I'm learning about, not him. Hammershoi didn't only paint his sitting room. Like many artists using the newly opened railways of the 1900s, Wilhelm made tentative excursions into the surrounding country. This is the first time I've been out of Copenhagen, and I look around and I'm in his paintings. I'm suddenly realizing, of course, that I've tended to concentrate just on the interiors, the rooms, but his landscapes are remarkable too, and they're very striking. Somehow there's absolutely no leap of imagination required. This is Hammershoi's Denmark as I look out and I look at these landscapes. Yes, there are the same trees. Yes, there are the same kind of buildings and their relationship to the landscape. That's quite striking. This land doesn't seem to have changed much. And then there's this farmhouse, which looks so distinctive. It sort of seems to be suspended between sky and ground. It's not just a farmhouse with lots of things going on. In fact, there's very little going on. There's a bit of smoke coming out. But this farmhouse, I want to see that.
Næste station, Kalundborg. Toget kører ikke videre. DSB og togets personale håber alle har haft en behagelig rejse.
I think I get the same feeling of these landscapes as I do when looking at the rooms. It's almost as though there's a timelessness about them. And the fact that there really aren't people in these paintings seems to suggest that what he values is the landscape itself. And it's as though he's removed all the people from that landscape, taken them away almost deliberately, because he wants us to look at certain things. This is the most westerly point of the Sealand Peninsula, only 60 miles from Copenhagen, but it feels a lifetime away. Yeah. It's the right sort of height. Long, single story. Now, it looks as though there are two houses here, but it's a courtyard, so there are houses all around, so there must have been buildings behind him. Ah, now that's the key, the double door. There's only one double door, and that must be that one there. Therefore, that is the farm, Resneus. 105 years on, it must be that building there. Ah, there it is in the picture with the little chimney. Yes, there's a single chimney, it looks a bit different now. A half-timbered black and white. Then they would all been painted white. That's what makes a difference. Otherwise, it's exactly it. It looks a bit deserted at the moment. Let's go and see. Wow. Hello. I'm Michael Palin. I'm just wondering if this house is the same as this one here.
Yeah.
It is? Yeah. Ah. Yeah. Can I come in and talk to you?
Come in first.
Thank you so much. Ah, good. Well, this is very kind. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Lisbeth and I'm the neighbour.
Oh, lovely. Elizabeth, good. Shall I sit down here? Thank you. So, how long have Ove and Emily known this house? How long have they lived here?
55 years.
50.
They have been living here in 55 years.
Right.
But always born here.
Oh, really? Born in this? You're born in this?
Yeah.
In this house?
Yes.
Ah, there's something here which is rather interesting because in Hammershoi's paintings there's always his wife Ida, who I must say looks a bit like that, and she's there in a black dress. And I see, is this a picture of you, Emily? So,
Me more.
It's Emily's mother.
Oh, your mother, right?
And father.
Yeah.
Ah.
On their wedding day.
Oh, right. Yeah. And I noticed that she's wearing a black, not white. Normally in England you'd be married in white.
Around 1900 it was normal to get married in black.
Well, that's interesting because Hammershoi and Ida got married, I think, in about 1890, around then. So probably she would have remained in her black dress even for her wedding. Are there any sort of local stories that about the artists who came here?
Jeg ved ikke andet det, jeg har hørt om det, og det var nogen, der var lidt halvtosset.
Yes, Ove said that he doesn't know that much about it, but it was a union of arts coming in the Helena-Hytten, and they
Helena-Hytten being, is that a place?
It's a summer house for arts.
Yes. For arts.
And it's artists, yes.
Yeah.
And the rumors said that they were coming in the spring, and they burn their clothes when they come and took on togas.
Really?
But there's a lot of rumors they were going naked, and they were perhaps all the things we hear now is more like the hippie time we had in the 60s and the 70s.
Oh, right. Oh.
Dressing up in togas, running around naked, that's not very Hammershoi. Erik Steffensen, a professor of art, explains.
His brother Sven, he loved to come here because he was also an artist, mostly in the ceramics.
Yeah.
And his friends, they had a sort of a society here where they did funny things. They were doing a little naked swimming and so on. This is actually the spot. This is Helenahytten, we say in Danish.
Yeah, which means...
Which means, that you come from Hellas.
The hut of Greek activities. It does have a sort of feeling of a Olympic Greek glade of some kind, doesn't it?
The Danish Olympics, you know. Actually, there was a cartoon at that time who sort of satirically said, like, so they are having a nice time here, you know, but they made a little fun of them.
I can't believe, from what I've seen, Wilhelm would be part of this. He seemed like a guy who'd be so withdrawn, rather embarrassed by what was going on.
Of course, that's why he's such a puzzle. You know, you can look at his pictures still and say there are a little something that are not exactly what we think it is.
So Sven and his
But of
friends,
course it was only men.
Only men, yeah. Well,
because
it was Greek, isn't it? Greek. There were no Greek women, were there?
It was...
Apart from the ones they chased around the vases.
I guess this is why we should picnic a little here.
Recreate this wonderful moment.
This is glasses designed by Sven in 1906. This is the
so
first...
It wasn't just painting and sculpture.
No,
they were craftsmen as well?
Yeah, not only painting, but also ceramics, glass, silver is very famous also. So everything created in this period of life. So you can see also this is...
William Morris. That's a bit of, that looks like Delft.
Yeah, but this is the classical Danish, this Royal Copenhagen thing.
Right,
you know. But it's okay, you know.
And that's why in his paintings he has so little, because it has to live up to a certain standard, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can see in Wilhelm's painting, it's also things that he likes very much.
Yeah,
so typically he would love a plate like this.
Yeah.
I think perhaps snaps is too strong for you, but I brought one because this is very Danish, you know.
Terrific.
So I got this as a gift from Helena.
Beware a Greek sparing gift, unless they're schnapps.
And this is Danish wine, you know.
Really?
We never drink Greek wine here. But we have sort of the Greek spirit. But
Danish wine, is that
I will put out so you can see.
Is that a rare thing? Danish wine?
There's only one, not one bottle, but there's only one producer of red wine.
Yeah, this is a first. Oh, it's a terrific colour, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's deep ruby red. It's really good.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Quite intense.
Surprisingly good.
I mean, this whole scene it's so unlike what I know of Wilhelm, but this was what you say Sven used to do when he was here. Were Wilhelm and Sven close? Would they have been together at the table at a time like this?
Yes, this is very Danish. So I would say they would be together at this family spot, almost, you know. But
so he'd be no stranger to wine and good life.
You know, Sven, he collected teddy bears. You know, every night he did a toast with his teddy bears. So there's a teddy bear with a little red wine on it.
Are there any similar stories about Wilhelm, or was he always the grey one in the background who never gave a teddy bear wine?
People said that in these woods here, Wilhelm once found a man who hung himself, and he didn't like to go back to this spot again and so on. And that's, I think, why people put out anecdotes by he was hypersensitive and so on. So it's sort of a kind of a world which has two sides. The people that he mingled with, his family and so on, they were funny people. You know, they did funny things. And why would you sort of think that he had no humor?
So if he came all this way, why did he never paint a wonderful scene like this?
I think for two reasons. The first might be that it's too obvious. And the second is very practical. It took him 2 months to paint a landscape. 2 months after the summer might be gone, you know? And there was no time for it. So it's both a practical and an aesthetic one.
I've learned that Sven liked to run around naked, but Wilhelm continues to be frustratingly well wrapped up. Hammershoi came back to the west coast one last time to do a painting of a ballroom, now a museum, in Kalundborg. Hammershoi liked painting landscapes, but they were never as popular as his interiors. To make a living, he was driven back inside Strandgarde 30, the home that inspired and, perhaps in a sense, imprisoned him. Last I have permission, and this time my call is answered. Hammershoi painted these rooms over 60 times. This was his stage, perfectly lit, everything in its place, and Ida in the starring role, acting out the everyday moments of their life together. If there was a dark side to his work, Hammershoi never acknowledged it. He claimed the best joy he ever experienced was when he was absorbed in the act of painting. This is Hammershoi, 1911, so he'd be 47. And he looks suddenly much older than that. And it's interesting in this self-portrait how he's painted himself, you know, quite sort of unostentatiously, if you like. One corner of the picture, almost as though this whole area around here is more important to him as a painter than portraying himself and his own face, and there, that trademark of the window and the light from outside, but you know, you can't see anything outside. It's just still sort of tantalising glimpse of light there. And there he is inside his room, painting. And I suppose there's a certain amount of awareness there that he's getting old. Apparently he had very bad back trouble, couldn't really walk without a cane at this point, and in another 3 years he was diagnosed with cancer and died at the age of 51. But it's very sort of typical of him, really, almost reluctant to paint himself. Having seen the house, which is really about the end of the trail for me, I'm left with two feelings. One is, yes, I would still love to know more about him. I would still like him to tell me what the intention was in having Ida with her back to us all the time. What was the importance of the doors being half open? Was there a story there? Was it just an impression? Or did you just like painting doors? And the other side is just that maybe this is all there is. And he would say, well, I've given you my paintings. They've asked of you some questions. That's what I want. I want to be remembered just for the paintings. I'm not important. I think back and think, well, that's why I'm doing this. That's what started me on the trail, was just that room with the figure in black with her back to me. So I'm back where I started, with the painting that set me off on my journey. It was on exactly this spot that Ida, mysteriously absorbed in something, was painted by Hammershoi in the last year of the 19th century. There's a tendency now to want to know our artists, to expect them to reveal everything before we can properly judge their work. I think the key to understanding Hammershoi is that he deliberately didn't want us to know him. He was an artist. He made paintings. The rest is silence.
Trace one of Michael's epic journeys.